What are you doing?
Filming?
Pictures of us?
Yeah.
Can I get your badge number?
0016.
Go.
Is it shiny enough for you?
It's very shiny, sir.
All right. Give me your driver's license, Mr. Fifth Amendment, right?
You filming right now?
I am.
How come?
He's got the camera on. He's got the camera on me right now as we're talking.
Let's go ahead and get started, everyone. Y'all, thank you very much for coming out to the Taxation is Theft event here in Minneapolis. Woo! As I mentioned throughout the night, everything back there is free. Beer, everything. Books, bags, stickers, buttons. Please take everything and find a good home for it. So just a little bit of quick housekeeping. We want you to take your phone and pull it out. And we want you to text about this, and Facebook about it, and social media, all of it. Email your grandma and tell her about it. She'd love to hear from you, I promise. This is what we're doing. We're going around the country. We are doing 68 tour events in 110 days. I think this is our 13th city that we've been through, possibly 14th. And we'll be doing this until November 18th.
Wait, Ben, we don't have a 13th tour stop. We're skipping it and going from the 12th to the 14th.
14 right on.
Well, I'm not superstitious. I have 213. No, anyway, so that's what we're doing. We're going across the country with a very simple message that we are preparing to run Adam for President of the United States so that we can peacefully, responsibly, and orderly dissolve the entire U.S. federal government.
All right, we're in the right room.
Good. Couple of things that are really important about this. Number one, there will be a libertarian on the debate stage in 2020. This is
How'd you do that?
It's the Super Bowl of politics. For all the things that Gary Johnson did incorrectly, he has done this extremely well. And he has won lawsuits in lower level Supreme Courts
Right on.
that said, yes, the CPD, the Commission on Presidential Debates, is not living up to their charter as a nonpartisan organization, and so they have to create new rules on how to get in there. So,
does that mean that the other third parties will also be?
It depends on,
Possibly.
it's possible. So there will be at least 3, possibly 4, as we all know, and I think it's great. I would love to see 4 up there. The Greens are technically on enough ballots to win the presidency, and I think that's the only thing that matters. I think if you're on enough state ballots, you get to be in the Super Bowl of politics. But here's what this means. There will be 2 old party candidates saying the same old thing you've heard your entire lives that they never do, and at least one of them. We want that person to be this guy right here. Woo! So in the Libertarian Party, everything is done by delegates who show up to the convention. Last year we had just under 1,100 delegate seats, and which means that in order to win the nomination, we need 500 people. That's it. 500 people from around the country willing to become delegates to the National Libertarian Party Convention to show up and vote for this guy right here. Wins the nomination.
Can I interrupt about Minnesota here?
Yeah.
Does anybody know how many delegates Minnesota gets at the state convention or gotten national convention? How many they got in 2016? 9. That means we're gonna have to send some of you home tonight. I'm sorry. How many of you want to go to New Orleans for a fun weekend next summer? Yeah?
Hell yeah.
All right. Oh, come on. I didn't say only 9 of you were allowed to raise your hand.
Are you telling me that only 9 people from the state of Minnesota actually made that trip?
No, I'm saying only 9 were allotted to make that trip. I promise you, probably only 4 showed up. And you know what happened to the other?
Minnesota, brother.
You know what happened to the other 4 seats? Gary Johnson's people went next door to the Comic-Con
at the bar.
to the Comic-Con convention that was going on and said, hey, come on, you can be delegates from Minnesota. Let's go. I promise you that's what happened. And I promise you it's even scarier now that we will be on that debate stage. Do you know how much those old parties, how much money they spend to get on that debate stage? Hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, hundreds of millions to get on that debate stage. And suddenly now there's a way on that only requires 500 people. We want to make sure that no old party castaways end up taking our nomination. And we want the headline to read, Libertarians take control of the Libertarian Party. That's it.
Absolutely.
All we need is 500 people. If Minnesota wants to send more than 9 people, we can figure that out. We'll figure out a way to do it. Lots of states will accept people into their delegation. So that's what we're doing. Yes, ma'am.
You need to have a better credentials committee if you're accepting people from some convention next door and.
It's not a matter of the credentials committee, it's a matter of state bylaws. And each state has their own bylaws on how they accept
Well, you
delegation.
need to work on the Minnesota bylaws, for example.
Well, I'm not from Minnesota, so I can't. But what we want you guys to do is to get involved with the LP and do exactly that sort of thing. Make it to where it becomes very impossible for people to hijack the party. Because we want libertarians to run the Libertarian Party.
We want to make that irrelevant because we make it so competitive that lots of people want to show up and be delegates. And so there's none of this filling in at the last minute or buying seats at the last second. It's people showing up like you guys to the state convention who want to be delegates for a reason to defend this platform.
So I guess just moving forward, I want to give you a little bit of background. I've known Adam for 6 or 7 years now at this point. We've been looking for a reason to work with one another. And I was there when he got out of jail in DC. The more I've gotten to know him, the more I realize what an honest person he is. And it goes beyond that. He's honest even when it harms him to be honest. And I think that's what they call integrity. And this man has miles and miles of integrity. And I couldn't be more honored to work with him in this capacity, to be the one alongside him when he throws the ring in the fire. I also want to introduce you to the guy who put this event together tonight. Great guy, great friend. He's known Adam for another several years at this point. He's got his own YouTube channel. And I told him I'd give him a few minutes to talk here. Would y'all please give it up for Mr. Andrew Henderson.
First of all, I'd like to give a big thank you to Dave Bacon for allowing us to use this space tonight. So can I get a round of applause for him real quick? So, taxation is theft. I would like to give you all an example of how taxation is theft here in Minneapolis. Every year, the Minneapolis Police Department, well, the Minneapolis City Government, pays out in between $2.5 and $3 million in police misconduct lawsuits and settlements. Now, unlike most cities who are insured by some organization, League of Cities, whatever, Minneapolis is self-indemnified, which means that money comes straight from the taxpayer. It comes from the general fund. So every time a Minneapolis cop gets sued or they settle out of court, that's your money. That's your tax money being used to pay off, you know, these police officers' misconduct. So if you live in Minneapolis, think about that for a minute. Think about how your tax money is used. That's just something I want y'all to think about, bring to your attention. But yeah, I'm not the guy you came here to hear tonight, so I'm going to introduce Mr. Adam Kokesh. Please come on up here, man.
All right. We always have such a beautiful community here in Minneapolis. This is awesome. I mean, is it such a libertarian state, right? No, it's not.
No, it's not, Adam.
Oh, jeez. Do we have, I guess, I'd like to say we have our work cut out for us, but right here it seems like we've already got a really strong crew. Now, a lot of times, I think of what we do as libertarian activists as dragging government along with public opinion. Marijuana legalization, great example, right? Not quite legal here, decrim for the state, pretty close, right? $200 fine, misdemeanor.
Actually, yesterday the governor
decrim.
said there will never be legal recreational marijuana smoking on his watch, end quote.
Because you have a medical industry corruption problem here
That's
in
correct,
Minnesota,
sir.
right? Yeah. Well, I don't know if you've noticed, but in the rest of the country, they've made weed so legal it's not even fun to smoke anymore. And if you follow the process of legalization, you see that public opinion was way ahead of time from the actual changing of the laws, right? And you know what we're doing with this campaign right here. Nothing less than taking down the biggest empire the world has ever known. And I am shocked on a daily basis when I see how easy this is going to be for us. Holy crap! And I'm not just talking about this delegate process. 500 people, right? That's all it takes to get the nomination. If we do our job in the next 3 years, and it looks like everything is going according to plan very well, if someone is going to beat us for the nomination, it's going to be because they blew up the party, because they invested millions, because they out-hustled and out-organized and made the party and the cause and the movement huge, in which case I would be happy to lose. But I talk to people. You know, we've been on this tour for 3 weeks now. We've had one phone die on us, a battery laptop that needed to be replaced twice. We've had the car in the shop 5 times, had a rear axle replaced, and been to the hospital once. And I love it when I tell this to people, and they, what? Why once?
Why the hospital?
Well, I was an eye infection, not pink eye.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry. It's not contagious. No, but it was just part of the adventure. It wasn't me even. Just to be clear, yeah. No, but every time I tell this to people, they go, "Oh yeah, it's really good you're getting that stuff out of the way at the beginning of the tour." I wish I did not know how probability works, but that's not really the case. And you know, so everywhere I go, I talk to a lot of non-political people, regulars, normies, right? Not the nerds like us who care about these things the way that we uniquely do. And we've been talking to a lot of mechanics lately, so that's like my favorite demographic to reference. Not enough nurses. If we could have like a survey of nurses, we'd have been in a lot more pain and trouble on this tour. But mechanics, we talked to a lot of mechanics, we talked to people at gas stations, things like that, right? And people see the Freedom Mobile. I don't know if you saw it. We're going to invite everybody out here to sign it like we normally do after this. It's on the street right out there. Giant Freedom logos on it, right? People ask at gas stations, "Oh, what's freedom?" "Oh, it's my book that I started writing when I was in jail for civil disobedience. It's about how we create a more peaceful, harmonious, and productive society by dissolving government altogether." And most go, yeah, sounds like a good idea. By the way, I'm running for president in 2020 on the platform to dissolve the entire federal government. Sounds like a good start. The one thing that is holding this movement back more than anything else is this false negative assumption about how people will receive our message. We think that people aren't looking for radical solutions. By radical, we mean striking at the root of the problem. They are. They don't want to waste time with the old party's extremism of nibbling around the edges. We assume that people aren't going to like us if we talk about politics. And if we talk about this as a political message, yeah, we're going to piss people off. But then we're doing it wrong. This is not a political message. This is an anti-political message. And if you want to argue and debate and win discussions about issues, well, guess what? You've already lost. Winning the battle, losing the war, right? Every time you win a political debate or an argument on Facebook, you have lost an opportunity to share a beautiful message that you are passionate about in a way that brings you joy. Think about that. That's what it means to represent this as an anti-political message instead of a political message. When we're dragging government along with public opinion, like hopefully by a leash with a choke chain with like really sharp spikes on the inside, right? It's not that good of a leash, unfortunately. But as we drag government along, we might find that people are really ready for this. That it's really easy. Now, coming to this conclusion in my strategy after 10 years of full-time activism wasn't easy. There were a couple misconceptions that I had to let go of. And one is this idea that we need to wake up everybody. We need everybody to get this idea of universal nonviolence as a definition of freedom, of a stateless society, of Austrian economics and voluntary philosophy. Like, that everybody has to understand this and then we can have that change. It's not true. It's not true at all. I mean, if you haven't noticed, we live in a communist country at this point, right? We have, I don't know, 6 and a few halves of the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto already fully implemented with this government, how many Americans are like, oh yeah, we understand and we want communism? There's, and by the way, if your answer is Antifa, shut up. There's no such thing as Antifa. It's like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, right? No, they're like a handful of real Antifa people and the rest are paid protesters. How did we get to this point, right? How did America get to this point, or the world even, under the statist regimes that we have today? It wasn't by a deliberate, conscientious change in the public paradigm. People are led. And one of the things we have to accept, because there's no point fighting against this or resisting this or being angry about it, is that 80 to 90% of the population is never going to think like us. They're never going to care about what we care about the way we care about it. And that's okay. And I'll come back to this later as an idea of taking leadership in the world in general, but in this movement in particular. So unfortunately, we're going to have to get political.
Not too hard.
Is anybody there for this? Ben, this was the 2016 Libertarian National Convention. One of our candidates, who shall remain unnamed for the evening at least.
James
No. The fat guy in the thong. We'll just leave it at that. Got up to dance at the. He was a candidate for party chair. Got up to dance, and this was his act of civil disobedience, I guess you could call it. It's really tempting when you wake up to the nature of government. We wake up to the reality of the system that we live in, the reality of society, to think that the answer is somehow in just checking out or withdrawing our support or creating our own societies. And there's a lot of great examples of this in seasteading and homesteading, like with what I'm doing here. What I'm doing, as you mentioned, at my place in Arizona, building an off-grid homestead. But it doesn't matter if you go Galt and you have your little community, and if we get all the smart, freedom-loving people out of the United States, well, they're still going to have all the guns, they're still going to have the printing presses, and if anything, they're going to be answerable to a less intelligent, less informed public, and you are less safe. And it's really tempting to think of freedom as an individualist philosophy. Right? Self-ownership. When we talk about the rights of the individuals is foundational to what we believe in. But it could just as well be described as a relational philosophy, right? That all human relations should be free of force and fraud and coercion. And the reason I say all this is that if you have institutions based on violating freedom, still in existence in the world, you are only as free as the least free among us. So, since I'm getting ready to run for president, here's my obligatory slide with a quote from the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is really foundational to what is America, right? Not the Constitution, but the Declaration. And there's not a lot that I would say makes me a patriot. In fact, really there's only one thing. And I know this is kind of weird coming from me as the guy who made the video called Patriotism is for Bitches. And when I used the term bitches in the title of that video, I did not mean it in some random, insulting, pejorative sense. I meant it very literally. That when you are a patriot, as we think of it today, someone who loves their country, your love is defined by borders and circumstance of history and war and politicians and all that crap. That is making yourself subservient, literally a bitch, right? But there is something to Americanism that is unique among all nations, that is unique to our history and our heritage here. And it's not the borders, it's not the land, it's not the people, and it damn sure well is not this frickin' government. But the tradition of overthrowing empires in the pursuit of these ideals.
Yeah.
And one of the ways we screwed it up is that we thought we could use government to pursue those ideals. Any Big Lebowski fans here? I mean, notice there's a big cult overlap with the libertarian movement and the Big Lebowski cult following, right? Okay, good. So, because this is the Taxation is Theft tour, we have some obligatory taxation is theft memes. Nice. That's not me in that picture, by the way. That's not me either. But yes, it's a global phenomenon. Just to wake everybody up? No? Okay. Does everybody know who this is? Or is this am I like dating myself now with like weird reality TV references? Okay.
Is that the girl that-
Honey Boo Boo. No, okay. So, while we have this consensus developing, right, that taxation is theft, what I'd like to suggest is a completely different strategic approach from what we've had in the past, which was somewhat based on, let's come up with the exactly correct philosophy about everything and then take over the federal government to impose our libertarian ideals on the entire country. And the problem is, we never got past the first step. And what we've done is we've turned this movement and the Libertarian Party into a debate club.
No, we haven't.
No, we haven't.
Well
done.
You just said that a little louder. That's like the best night comment we've had on the tour so far. Yeah. Did everybody hear that? I know it's not even going to be funny when I retell it, but no, I said we've turned the party into a debate club. No, we haven't.
You
Okay.
need to turn that one into a meme.
Yeah. But it's because we've gone under this assumption, because we're ideologues, because we're analytical thinkers, that we can be right about everything. Shocking, right? That that's not true. And that's what turns us into this debate club, right? So when I was in Malta for a conference, the Quarks conference, about a month ago, I heard a speech from Andreas Kohl, who's known as Mr. Liechtenstein, because he's a big advocate of the Liechtenstein system. How many of you have heard of Liechtenstein?
The country?
Yeah, all right. Hands, see the country. How many of you could find it on a map? Liars. Yeah, liars. No way. No way. I couldn't find it on a map, and I'm telling you about it in a talk here, right? Liechtenstein is ruled by a prince, not a king. It's the highest governing official. It's a country of about 40,000 people. And a few years ago, the prince put out a referendum to limit his power significantly. And it failed. The people said, yes, we want you to have this power over us. Every municipality within the country of Liechtenstein, explicitly in its governing documents, has the right to secede. This is the closest we have to voluntary government on earth today. That's why you haven't heard of this system. Yeah. And as an example of a small country with very few natural resources, having embraced a philosophy like this, they've been incredibly productive and wealthy, outsized compared to their natural resources because of this attitude towards governance. And the prince himself is an anarcho-capitalist. How about that? Yeah, there's an actual anarcho-capitalist head of state in the world. Bet you didn't know that, right?
I had no idea.
Shocking. So Andreas in his speech said something that I found really, really offensive. He said that we should be agnostic when it comes to taxes and regulations. Now, I'm not triggered by much, but I was triggered, all right? No, okay, taxation is theft, right? The tribe has spoken. Taxation is theft. What the hell are you doing, Andreas? Like, you're telling me I got to be agnostic about taxes and regulations? And the point he was making was that if we really want to see the ideal libertarian social order, as Hans Hermann Hoppe, who was the keynote speaker of this conference, would call it, of enclaves, right, of private communities where people can set their own rules or opt out as individuals, right? What we have to support is not taking over governments and imposing our view on everybody, but respecting the right of self-determination of communities. That's the key strategic difference I'm suggesting. Instead of making the libertarian movement about libertarian philosophy, about debating, about politics, about arguing, about being right about everything, we make it about localization. We make it about respecting communities. We make it about decentralizing power. We make it about respecting people. We make it about policy that makes everyone's life better immediately. And we make it about applying our principles to help others. Not debating them about principles or waiting for them to get on board with ours. We don't have to do that. And this gets us around the problem of trying to make everybody care. Because who wants a 30% pay raise? Who wants to see their taxes not go to serving the empire? Who wants to see the Pentagon not have $6 trillion to just lose whenever they feel like it? Who else wants to see the end of the IRS? And I really think the most important promise that we can make with this campaign, what's that?
H&R Block.
H&R Block, yes. Put all the accounts out of business, out of work. But the most important promise that we can make with this campaign, of course, no more daylight savings time.
Yeah. Sweet.
That always gets better response than abolishing the IRS. I don't know why. Maybe I should just run on the campaign platform of abolish daylight savings time, Adam is emperor for life. I think we could probably get away with that at this point. So I like to, every chance I get, embarrass my audiences. So if I may, back to this idea of leadership and taking charge and getting over these false negative assumptions, right? How many of you, by show of hands, designed the cut of the shirt that you're wearing right now? Oh, no. Normally there's a smart ass who raises their hand for that too, but okay, not tonight. You starting to see my point here? If I was giving a talk on fashion design, I could look down my nose at all of you and say, what a bunch of sheeple. What a bunch of followers. And then I would do my bit from The Devil Wears Prada, right? You don't even know what color blue that is. Okay, you guys haven't seen Devil Wears Prada? I'm kind of glad that you guys haven't. That's okay. All right. If we're capitalists, we believe in specialization of labor. Not everybody needs to do everything, right? The people who are good at some things do those things. None of you are leaders in fashion design. We're all followers. We're all happy to be followers, right? Well, let's think about politics that way.
We are.
Most people are happy to be followers. That's okay. That means that it is incumbent upon us who see the way forward to be leaders, to take leadership, to show the way forward for humanity. That's what we're doing. So this is a picture of me in Iraq, and I know a lot of you have heard my stories. I'm working on a war memoir that's coming out next spring. But I look older there, is that what you said?
No, I said, how old are you there, like 19?
That was 2004, so 13 years ago I would have been 22-ish. Yeah, I was 22 then. 35 now. So, yeah, the years have not been kind, have they?
No, they've been quite kind. I'm just saying that guy looks absolutely nothing like him.
Should I go back to the mustache? Is that what you're saying?
No, you can't go back to that. It's all over now.
Who was telling me that there's an article that came out today about why mustaches are offensive because they're law enforcement symbols of authority.
They're racist too.
Cop mustache. I should.
They're racist because black people don't grow mustaches. Right.
So I just put this up here because I don't want to tell war stories all night, but I want to remind you of a critical part of my experience that was essential to my motivation, my activism. And I was in Fallujah for the first battle in 2004. If you guys don't remember, that was the one that started with 4 Blackwater security agents driving across the southern bridge over the Euphrates. They had their bodies strung up and burned on the northern bridge where I ran a checkpoint for a while during the siege of Fallujah. And it was during that time there was a firefight where a Marine got shot through the armpit hole in his flak jacket. And we were called to assist in the medevac. So we're following in my Humvee, I'm driving as we're getting shot at, and there are a couple of corpsmen working on this Marine on the stretcher in the Humvee in front of me. We get to the surgical tent, and they can't open the tailgate because there's these water jugs and gas cans on it that are weighing it down. So I jump out, and I go lean against the tailgate, and we get it down. And so surprisingly now I'm holding the side of the stretcher with this Marine on it, and his arm flails off behind him, and I put it back on, and I say, "It's okay, we made it, you're going to be fine. We got you there, hang on." And we take him in, we put him down on the operating table, and all the medical staff yells at us to get out and just jump. And 5 minutes later, the doctor comes out of the tent yelling, "Fucking corpsmen!" As if to blame that Marine's death on the corpsmen who were trying to save him. But he was bleeding out from a bullet that had severed his spine. There was no chance. And to see, like, even right there in combat, or maybe just removed from it, we're dealing with a life and death situation. And this asshole is playing politics, trying to pass the blame. Are you kidding me? And it wasn't just, hey, this is a matter of life and death. When we talk about political conversations here, that we have the appropriate sense of gravity to what we're doing when we're talking about issues of war and peace. But there was also an experience I had during the siege when 2 young men were caught escaping the city that was, of course, continuously being bombarded with C-130 Spectre gunship fire, which is artillery from the sky. So of course they're trying to get out if they're not trying to meet 72 virgins. They were caught swimming out of the river. They had sandbags put over their heads. They had their hands zip tied behind their backs, and they were sat cross-legged on a cement floor in a guard shack right by that bridge. I came in, I was tasked with guarding them for a 4-hour shift, and they'd already been there 12 hours. Now, sitting cross-legged on the floor with your hands tied behind your back technically isn't a stress position. But if you don't think it's torture, I dare you to try it. Just go sit down with your hands tied behind your back on a cement floor, and I'll bet you're going to have to start moving around. Your legs are going to go to sleep. Your butt's going to go numb. Your back's going to hurt. After about half an hour, that's torture.
That's without your face covered, right?
Without your face covered, you're still going to feel all that. And then go for 12 hours without going to the bathroom. Or maybe more accurately, without getting up to go to the bathroom. And that was a state I found these men in after 12 hours when I got there to guard them, and my job was to keep them awake. Sleep deprivation torture. So I used the Arabic that I had learned to be better at civil affairs, better at helping people in Iraq, to taunt them. So the sense that I have is not just of the pain and suffering and consequences of war, but the power, the evil power that government has to drive someone who is even of as good intentions as I had going to Iraq to the depths of such evil. And you can take this as to learn the lesson that I did, that you can learn from the mistakes of others. Because as Ron Paul said, you don't have to go to Iraq to read the Constitution. And I think it's a lot bigger than that. You don't have to go to war to understand human suffering. You don't have to experience all of the pain and suffering that regular Americans experience with wrongful arrest, with the drug war, with civil asset forfeiture, with IRS audits, with dealing with red tape and bureaucracy and fines and taxes and tickets and all the other bullshit, life-ruining enforcement mechanisms of the government, to know that what we are doing is really the highest calling that we can take on as human beings to alleviate suffering. So for me, it was Iraq Veterans Against the War. All right, so this is, we were going to get deep tonight. Iraq Veterans Against the War, this is in front of the Capitol in D.C. Doing a mock combat patrol. This is getting arrested in front of Independence Hall in Philadelphia at a marijuana protest. And I just love, I didn't make this meme, but I just love this for the little perspective that it gives people that I think is really critically important to cut through the propaganda, you know, of America being the freest country on earth and all that nonsense. So if you can't read this, it says, yes, this is tech support. Your government is doing what? Have you tried turning it off and back on again? More importantly, if you could turn it off, why would you ever turn it back on again? So, to put this in sloganeering terms, our platform is neutralize, privatize, localize. Because America is too good for this government. So, I'll explain this a little bit, right? Neutralize. In terms of the mechanics of the platform, we're going in like a bankruptcy agent. Now, I say I'm running for not president. Ben is my not campaign manager. And it's primarily because we are not filing FEC paperwork for now. But it's also really more accurate to say that I'm running for not president than president. People say, you're running for president. No, I'm really running against the presidency itself. It's a silly job. It shouldn't exist. And Ben, he's made me I used to say this campaign started as a joke. It really started as a dare. Here, hold my beer. It was in 2012 at the Bilderberg meeting in Virginia. Jason Burmis asked me, oh yeah, well, what would you do if you were president? Quit, go home, get a real job? It's a silly position, right? It shouldn't exist. Throw the ring in the fire. What do you mean, what would I do as president? I don't want to be president. That's absurd. And then people started asking me questions. Well, what would you do about this? Well, what would you do about that? I was like, you understand this isn't a real campaign, right? But okay, fine, I'll answer your questions. And all of them were really startlingly easy. What do you do about this? What do you do about that? Well, what do you do about the IRS? Well, cut everybody's right hands off so it doesn't happen again and send them home. Oh wait, we can't do that. Shit. All right, well let me think of a more practical policy. So, eventually we were like, hey, well we have a reasonable, comprehensive plan to do this. And then it occurred, like, well, we have to pursue this if this is a possibility. So, neutralize. I go in on the first day, sign one executive order in which I resign from president to custodian of the federal government. I love that. It's so much more appropriate, right? You don't call him Mr. President, Mr. Custodian. It'll be fine. We're going to clean up the mess and pick up the pieces most likely by the time we went on this platform. But it's very simple. Sign one executive order, and in that executive order, we have laid out the entire administrative process for dissolving the federal government in a way that is preordained, planned, and worked out in advance. It appoints custodians to every department who are no longer secretary of X, but custodian of X to carry out that very specific plan. The only power that I retain is in supervising this process to replace the heads of departments as necessary if they're not following the plan or if they're unable to carry it out. But that's about it. So, the next thing, part of the neutralizing. With the signing of this executive order, the federal government is effectively declared bankrupt. All of its laws moot, unenforceable, and of no effect. It is now a custodial institution. So, the next thing, privatize. Very misunderstood word, right? A lot of people think of this as we're going to take some broad public resource and put it in the hands of a few rich assholes. When really, the opposite is the reality when we talk about the federal government. And I love using the VA as an example. It's my favorite example. Are there any veterans here? Don't worry, we're not going to make you stand up and blow smoke up your butts. Okay, just a few. All right, thank you. How often, have you guys qualified for VA care?
Yep.
Yes?
I wouldn't know.
No? You wouldn't know. Why not?
It's a blur. I've tried. Never got a straight answer.
And you?
I go, yeah,
How often do you go?
like once a year for a checkup, yeah.
As little as possible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've actually had a surgery there though.
How'd it go? Lucky? Got lucky? All right. Now, the VA is staffed by a lot of wonderful people who take pay cuts to work there, and still, excuse me, for most veterans, the answer to how often you go to the VA is as little as I possibly can,
Okay.
right?
From now on. I'll say
Yeah, all right. Now you have a better answer. But no, you said once a year. I mean, you're not going, you're not seeking any
Right, exactly.
extra treatment there. So, more importantly, we have 20 veterans committing suicide every day in this country. The VA does not exist to take care of veterans, let's be honest. It's a pacifier to make people think that the government cares about taking care of veterans so they can keep getting gullible young men and a few women to enlist. It has nothing to do with taking care of veterans except as a front in that. So what do we do when we say we're going to privatize the VA? Because the VA should exist. It provides a legitimate function. It provides services that people want to pay for and that people want to consume, sort of. So we spin it off as a private institution. You give every single veteran in America one ownership voting share. You give it an endowment as you liquidate the federal government, and I guarantee when you put those resources in the hands of veterans, you're not going to have 20 veterans committing suicide every day.
That's right.
Privatization means putting resources in the hands of people who should own them legitimately and ending the corrupt, illegitimate ownership of government. We do this with a lot of other agencies within the federal government. If they have discrete functions that can be preserved and spun off, that's fine. We don't want to abolish, although I thought that word would have been nice, with abolition of slavery. People go, oh yeah, we're going to abolish this form of slavery too. But no, it's not even accurate, because to do this in a responsible, orderly manner is a dissolution process, not an abolition. So, localize. Now, how many of you, when talking about the ideals of a stateless society, have gotten the question, but who will build the roads? Yeah, some of you guys have heard
That's
this.
the question, isn't it?
By the way,
Road
on the last tour I got to talk about this, but I can't stop because it's like the crowning achievement of my life. When I bought a little property in Arizona last year, 10 acres in the mountains, it did not connect to any existing roads. So, you know what I did, right?
You built a road?
Well, I called the government and I begged for help, and I waited and I paid my taxes and I voted, and I waited patiently and I waited some more and I waited some more and I couldn't get to my, no. I built a road. Don't get too excited, it's just a scratch in the dirt. But hey, whenever you get the question, who will build the roads?
So you're saying we should not drive on your road?
It's a very, very private road. Actually, there's something on our I'm going to use that as a secret plug here for the flyers, because there's something on our flyers about it. If you read one of the flyers and you figure it out, you can ask me about it, and I'll tell you all about the road. But last year, we had a little naming contest for what we would call the road, and the clear winner, far above the rest, the name of my private road now is Ma Road. So I'm a libertarian because I hate roads. I hate them. I think they should all be destroyed. No. I love roads. I love it. It's silly, right? I mean, the things they have to throw at us. But we all know if it wasn't for government, we would all have self-flying cars by now, right? So, as for the present reality, localize. Really easy, right? I love the roads, I love infrastructure, I love the resources that unfortunately our government has a monopoly over. How do we transition them to being more accountable to the people they're supposed to serve? Localize them. Really easy. Department of Transportation, do we abolish it? No. You just have an orderly administrative process of transferring the authority and the resources that it controls to the states, and then you send everybody home. So, about pitching this platform in terms of localization. And again, how do we achieve what we want to achieve in terms of moving towards a free society before we wake everybody up? Again, you apply these principles to make life better for everyone immediately. So, you're a liberal, you live in a liberal state. You're a conservative, you live in a conservative state. I can't convince you that you should be free. Fine. You want to be governed by somebody. Okay, all right. Would you rather be governed locally, where your voice and your vote have a chance of mattering, or would you rather be governed by someone in some far-off capital who clearly doesn't care about you? Besides, you don't want to be tied to those crazy people over there, do you? If you like your government, you can keep it. It worked for Obama, right? But in a very serious way here, we're not arguing about the role of government. You want government to do X? Fine. In your community, where you don't impose it on anybody outside of your community. I don't have a problem with that. And this is where it comes in, being agnostic about taxes and regulation. If I was able to truly secede on my property and have my 10-acre Adamarchy, Adamistan, I don't know, we come up with some more clever, I call it Freedom Farm right now, that's a little easier to say, isn't it? But if I was truly sovereign on my 10 acres and you wanted to live at my place, I'd probably charge you rent. That might be a lot of taxes. If you're living in my place, you're going to follow my rules, my regulations, right? Who are you to say what those should be on my property? That's the critical strategic difference we're talking about here. So, the biggest objection about the military, and we know 900 bases in 153 countries is not fighting for your freedom, it is an empire. So, I thought when we started this campaign that this was going to be the biggest objection to the platform. And you would say, well, without a military, who's going to keep us safe? And you know what? It's not. I don't even know what the biggest objection is anymore, because most people who just hear about this are really happy to hear about it. Oh, well, we're going to have a choice in 2020. But the thing about the military, you'd think that was a big one, right? But in the age of the internet, most people seem to have an inherent understanding that you can't lie us into war like you used to.
I think that's one objection.
We'll cover that. But no, it's just, it's not possible the way that you used to. You used to be able to. You know, in Marine Corps boot camp, they teach us about Major General Smedley Butler as one of the most decorated Marines in military history, 2 Medals of Honor, half a dozen Silver Stars and Bronze Stars, and V combat devices for valor and all that stuff.
The Marines actually talk to you about it?
Well, they teach us about him in boot camp for his military record. They do not tell us that when he got out of the military, he wrote a book called War is a Racket, in which he describes himself as a high-class muscle man for big business. Poor men died in rich men's wars, and it's always based on lies. And in the age of the internet, it's just not possible to convince a critical mass of the American military that everybody in Iran wants to kill you. Because you can get on YouTube, you can fact check that shit, you can Skype somebody in Iran if you really want to. In the age of the internet, it is inconceivable, and yes, I know what that word means, thank you very much. It's inconceivable that you could convince millions of gullible young men to dress up in silly costumes and meet in the middle of a field where none of them live to kill each other because they're wearing different colors. When Obama tried to get boots on the ground in Syria, what stopped him? It was active duty military guys with these silly little placards they would hold up that said, I did not enlist to fight for Al-Qaeda in Syria, because they saw through the bullshit. We are coming to a point in history where the worst that governments can get away with in terms of war now, and they will always get away with as much as we will let them, these little proxy wars, the global war on terror, the ongoing occupation of Afghanistan, and arguably Iraq still at this point as well. But the idea of a large-scale force-on-force war, simply not possible. We have made this progress. And I love quoting the work of Professor Steven Pinker, Harvard professor, who gave a great TED Talk called The Surprising Decline in Violence. And he has proven academically that we are living in the most peaceful times in human history. You are less likely today than ever before to be subject to violence at the hands of another human being. What a beautiful thing to celebrate, especially if you care about freedom, understand freedom is nonviolence. This is the ultimate mark of human progress. Yeah, we're not killing each other as much as we used to. We're getting along better and we're more productive than ever before. How about that? But we still believe the lies of war and militarism. Say, Dave, thank you. It's a real honor to be in a place where we're in a VFP office and a WAM office right next door. That is really cool and really awesome for me as a member of Veterans for Peace and Iraq Veterans Against the War. Really cool energy in the space. I appreciate that. One of the greatest lies is that wars are fought between countries. If you think about it for a second, you realize that it's bullshit. But we have been taught it was America versus Germany versus Japan versus China versus Russia. Bullshit. Wars are conducted by governments using violence to expand their protection rackets. Simple as that. It is always the case with every single war and requires lies. And the people who object to this platform, who is it that says we need a military to keep us safe? What typical American demographic?
Wealthy people?
The right. The right.
Well, the right. More, you? Okay.
Conservatives?
Conservatives, neoconservatives, neoliberals, right? But especially the conservatives and neoconservatives, the real base of American militarism. And with them, we get to use the ultimate appeal to authority. Although for those of us who care about rationality, it's nice that it's also backed up by logic and reason. The founders of this country, not the framers, the founders of this country were against the idea of a standing army entirely. Because they knew that a standing army, a military, will make you less safe in every way possible. They knew that the free market answer, the legitimate, honest, ethical answer to defense was the militia. And that the government monopoly version of that was the military. And it has all the consequences of any monopoly of poor services and services that are not accountable for the people that they're supposed to be serving. The militia defense is a superior defense from anybody's perspective who understands the logistics of combat. If China wants to send 1 million troops over to take over America, and by the way, they don't have to, all they have to do is send their lobbyists. If they were to send 1 million troops to the West Coast, what would we do to defend ourselves? We'd send 1 million people dressed up in silly costumes to meet them and make it really easy for them to kill each other. What's the militia defense? All right, China. Come on in. Roll your tanks down our streets. March your troops down our streets. Shop at our stores and restaurants. The minute you send a tax collector to my door, he's going to get shot in the face. You want to defend against a foreign invader? You don't go meet them in the field. How was America started in the first place? We did not defeat the British Empire by lining up in rows to get shot. This was the American Revolution, the first large-scale, and forgive me if I'm not precise in my military history here, but it was the first large-scale significant application that we know of this militia defense in a war that overthrew an empire. And it worked! How we have forgotten this. But it's worse because when you understand the nature of government, you understand the nature of war, you know that when you tell your government, please govern me, please rule me, please subject me to your monopoly protection services, well, guess what? That makes you a really juicy target for another government that might invade your country and come in and take over and then do what?
The same thing.
Govern you! like you're being governed now, except if even the Chinese government had to start from scratch, it'd probably take them a long time before they get to the point where the average American is today, where they're working for government half the freaking year. Holy crap! If anything, if you're an American, you care about freedom, and you understand that we have about the most anti-freedom government in the world, you should welcome a foreign invader. But there's a better way. Fortunately, we don't have to do that. The founders were right. They knew that the greatest defense of any people is a well-armed population that refuses to be governed by anyone.
Yes.
That is what we are bringing the shift about. It is to strengthen the American defense. It is to restore the American heritage. So, as James Madison put it somewhat more eloquently, pointing out another problem with standing militaries, the means of defense against foreign danger have been always the instruments of tyranny at home. Among the Romans, it was a standing maxim to excite a war whenever a revolt was apprehended. Throughout all Europe, the armies kept under the pretext of defending have enslaved the people. Now, in the United States, we have laws against domestic military operations, and yet not only do we have National Guard troops training in American streets on a regular basis, we have a standing army in the DHS, in the TSA, in the IRS. Holy crap, yeah, they have SWAT teams. What other government agencies?
BLM.
Department
The
of Education.
BLM. What?
The Department of Education.
Department of
That's the one that
Education
gives you-
has SWAT teams. Standing army to mess with the people. We have it. So, the most important part of my platform, we are going to have the best alien relationship department of all the governments on Earth. No, okay. Why is this in here? One of the things that we get to do in dissolving the federal government is make all of the records available. No more secrets, no more lies. Now there has to be a process to this, right? We don't want to reveal any private information, so there might be a National Archives Administration. There might be a continual funding of the Library of Congress, for example. But not only do we get all the patents out, all the records out, all the secrets out, we finally get to find out once and for all
Who shot Kennedy?
whether the Earth is round or flat. I know you guys have been dying to get those secret photographs, all the stuff that NASA's hiding from us right now. But yes, who killed JFK? What really happened on 9/11? Gulf of Tonkin, Lusitania. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I'm a conspiracy realist. We know that people conspire against us, and we don't need to theorize. We don't need to look at the knife in our back to pull it out. But when we do, we're going to put out all the stories to make sure it never happens again. I don't know why this slide's in here, but it's I'm supposed to say something about the internet effect, but I think we already covered it. People who trade don't fight, right? We're more globally connected than ever before. It's about time governments start reflecting that. Now, imagine if everyone was this passionate about things that actually matter.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys share my frustration here. So I want to make a little analogy that I think describes at least how I feel, and from what I've seen, how other people feel about their activism. I'm a fan of Mary J. Ruwart, longtime libertarian political activist, wrote a great book called Healing Our World in an Age of Aggression. And I can't think of a more beautiful phrase to describe what we are doing in moving humanity past this violent paradigm of statism and militarism. And in a sense, this makes us the doctors in this analogy, right? It's not that we had to go to years of medical school, although some of us have spent way too much time reading books to get to this point. I have to remind people sometimes, the state will not end a day sooner because you read another book about monetary policy. Sorry. But we are the doctors. We are the ones who have special knowledge, special perspectives, special information that can heal the world, that can stop this pain and suffering of government. And for most of us, the idea of waking up, of figuring all this out, is like driving down the freeway and seeing an accident on the side of the road. And having done 3 tours like this has actually happened to me a few times. I've seen a couple dead bodies on the side of the road in this. I've been, PTSD is not something veterans have a monopoly on, let's just put it that way, right? We've all known someone who's had some traumatic experience. But it's like you come up to this accident, you pull over, you see this accident, and there are a dozen people on the side of the road bleeding out. They're all bleeding to death. And you only have 2 hands. And you can jump in, and you can save 1. But you know that if you do, the other 11 are probably going to die. And sometimes this is what it feels like arguing individual issues. Trying to win every debate. Sometimes even trying to save a fellow activist who's in trouble, right? And eventually you get the feeling as an activist that what we're doing is playing whack-a-mole. One goes down, another pops up. One goes down, another pops up. We're fighting inches, right? And you can win inch by inch. And you know what's going to happen? The powers that be will pat you on the head and say, good little citizen, you follow the democratic process. Good for you. And they're going to laugh at you behind your back while they take a mile while you're not looking. Fuck that. I say we knock the legs out from underneath the whole table. That's what this campaign is about. More importantly, back to the analogy. You could save 1 person, or you could go call for help. So you go call for help, right? And you're screaming, top of your lungs, hey, I just need hands. You don't have to understand what's going on. You don't have to be a doctor. I just need hands. If I don't get hands, people are going to die. And there are people in the fast lane, and they can't hear you. And it's really tempting to be angry with them. It's really tempting to get frustrated. How can they not care? How can they be so apathetic? But a lot of them are dealing with their own pain and suffering at the hands of the state. A lot of them are doing other great things, moving humanity forward in ways that we don't even consider, right? Maybe someone, do you really want the guy who's about to cure cancer to stop and help us? No. Or the person who's working on world hunger or poverty, or the next technological breakthrough that's going to advance humanity in some way we can't even imagine. No. But it's hard, right? Because we have to let those people go. You can't chase them down. You can't be angry with them. That doesn't help. But then there are the people in the slow lane. And they're driving by and they're rubbernecking, right? And they want to say, they see what's going on. They can look out the car window. They go, oh, yeah, hey. And they can probably hear you through the window. But they don't stop. It's frustrating then, right? Really hard not to be angry. But even that doesn't come close to describing the reality. Because for the average American, it's much more like they're walking by sipping on a soda pop going, yeah, good luck with that, doc. Yeah. And holy shit, it is tough. It's really tough when you feel that. But what changed for me at some point was not wanting to be that guy anymore. And I know you guys are the ones who are rushing to help now. And I just want to point this out to say how honored I am that you are taking this time and putting in the effort to listen to me for an evening and talk politics so we can end the system once and for all. But that's what we're doing. Make no mistake about it. So on that note, I want to tell you guys about what we're doing and what you can do to help. So, the first thing, sign up to be a delegate. Now, there's a couple ways you can do that. Ben is in the back there. He's got his laptop. If you do one thing as a personal favor for me tonight, let us get your basic contact information. We're not going to share this list with anybody who doesn't need it as part of our organization. We'll have a state coordinator, a state delegate coordinator, and we want to make it as easy as possible for you. And as Ben said, in most states, they don't even fill their delegations. We are fundamentally changing that about the Libertarian Party. We are defending this platform. And as Ben said, we want to be there in 2018 with an overwhelming show of force so that the headlines afterwards read, libertarians have taken over the Libertarian Party. But there's two other things we want to do in 2018 that are really important. And one of them is to bring back the Dallas Accord. And that's from 1974, an agreement to bring minarchists and anarchists together around a unifying platform. And we're not sure what form exactly we're going to do this, but you have a sense now of what we're doing as something that is unifying, that brings people together, because it's about decentralization, not about being right about everything. So that's one thing. And the second thing is to get localization into the platform. So I hope you'll join us for that and that effort in 2018, as well as for the nomination in 2020. The next thing, get active with the LP. Be motivated, be involved. I know there's a lot of frustrations because the organization doesn't meet our expectations, but holy crap, it breaks my heart to hear stories like yours, Ben, all over the country when people say, man, I went to one libertarian meeting and it sucked. Well, then why didn't you bring a plan to make it not suck to the next meeting? It's really that simple. And I know it's frustrating when they don't contact you, and I know it's hard, but I'll bet you, and I know you know, if you would put your effort in since then to showing up and organizing for the party, you at least could have helped make them a little bit better organized here, right? Now, one of the frustrations that I think we carry into politics is thinking that we're going to be doing this for the rest of our lives. And it's not true. And this is in the book in chapter 10. I think I prove, as much as anybody can, that government is obsolete. That we are accelerating this human experience exponentially now with technology and productivity and everything else that is making it harder for government to get away with what they get away with. The Libertarian Party is not going to be the vessel of your activism for decades to come, because the Libertarian Party is the only party whose mission it is to put itself out of a job. Now, I know it was a shock to y'all, but the odds of winning on this platform in 2020 aren't great.
What?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Ben hates when I say that too. Now, we are running to win, and we will be ready to win. We have a couple law school students working on the executive order. We have some policy experts working on all of the various mechanisms of dissolution that need to go into that executive order to make that possible. But the objective in 2020 is to win the nomination and plant the flag on this idea, so that every time the federal government screws up between 20 and 24, and I think it's a pretty safe bet that it'll screw something up in 4 years, right? We get to be the ones going, hey, if you had supported us, that agency wouldn't even exist right now. Now it's possible, like I said, that we find out, we get this platform out, we win the nomination in 2020, and the American people go, oh, all right, yeah, let's try that. And we go, really? That's it? That's all we just had to put together a realistic platform to dissolve the federal government. You're all for it? Yeah, it's quite possible. Yeah, there's a global secession movement. And you know, America has to be the best at everything, so we're going to secede all 50 states at the same time. Hey, you know what the best part about dissolving the federal government is? The Olympics will be that much more competitive. So, there's a global secession movement, right? We see this. We're not bound by things things have always been that way, so that's how they have to be. If we don't win in 20, we're going to run in 24. If we don't win in 24, we're going to run in 28. And I'm committed to keep running on this platform until the federal government ceases to exist one way or another. It might not be like this. It might not be this easy. It might be a widespread secession movement, which would be nice. Relatively peaceful, orderly transition state by state. It might be by a collapse, the federal level, which would be ugly. In which case, what we're saying is, hey, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. This is the easy way. The hard way is continuing to ignore these problems and keep your head buried in the sand and then hope that government spares you in its violent death throes as it desperately clings to power. I don't like that plan. I like the dissolution plan a lot better. So, the next thing, donate money, of course. Yes, it takes money. We are a donation-based life form. We require your funds to make this tour possible, to make this campaign possible, as always. Just as importantly, you can donate time. You can get involved, and there's a flyer in the back with all the things on it that you can do. In kind, right now we're doing all of our business through a 501c3 nonprofit, which means that, Ben, I would like to thank you for your $10,000 worth of consulting time that you've given us this evening. It's been very helpful, and I'm happy to give you a receipt to reduce your federal tax liability by that amount. You're very welcome. If people want to make in-kind contributions to our 501c3 to reduce their federal tax liability in any way, we like helping people pay less in taxes. Join a special team. One of the advantages of being organized 3 years in advance with this is that we get to plug people in. We get to build an organization. We have a social media team, a street team, quick response team, media outreach team. There are like half a dozen other Facebook groups. Talk to Ben or myself. We'll get you plugged into that. Win converts. So this gets to the bigger picture, right? And my book has a tool for this. I guess I covered it already, but this attitude is so important. Stop arguing with people. Stop playing politics. Start sharing what's important to you from a position of love and joy. And then you get to give that to people. You're not proving anybody wrong. You're not being better than anybody. You're being giving and loving. I guarantee you're going to make more friends that way. And finally, and this is really important, be awesome to everyone. Now, a lot of people are very quick to point out that libertarianism is a very specific philosophy. That it only describes when is it appropriate to use force, right? The non-aggression principle, self-ownership, those philosophical axioms, that's what libertarianism is. And it's important to separate. Yes, we have aesthetics, and then we have our ethics. However, if you're here because you're involved with libertarianism in one way or another, it's because you care about something. It's because you care about making the world better for people. It has to be about other people. And it has to be motivated at some level by love. And if you take that and internalize it, if we change the culture of this movement from being a political movement to being about love and compassion and joy and making life better for everyone by applying ethical principles, we're going to be a lot more successful. And if that's what it's about for you, you don't have to wait for a stateless society to start making life awesome for everyone around you. So be the guy who laughs at other people's jokes, even when they're not funny like mine. I know it's hard sometimes. Be the guy at parties who's always lifting other people up, who's always celebrating other people's projects and hopes and ambitions. Be a supportive friend. Be a good person. Be the friendly guy on the street. Even to the statists. And you're going to run into some resistance talking about this, and you know it. Some of you have experienced this. Be awesome to those people too. It's okay if they're not ready to hear this. It's okay if they need therapy before they're ready to give up their attachment to the violence of statism. Love them all the more because they're the ones who really need it. Now, I'm not really allowed to curse anymore because I'm running for office, but my slides can form. Anyway, I just want to remind you that you're not, I know this might sound shocking, but not every human being is rational as you expect them to be. And you're going to run into some pretty absurd arguments. And I want to say, as an effective advocate, it's important that you remain impervious to these emotional manipulations and you don't get drugged down to their level. But no, what's important is that you keep loving your life and not get dragged down to their level, because it is a reduction in your freedom and makes you an emotional slave to external circumstances. Mm-hmm. So keep that in mind for your own sake.
Amen. Makes you push their agenda.
What the shit?
How long did it take you guys to figure out this picture? Normally you have to look at it for like half a second before you go, oh, okay, I see what he's doing here. Now, a lot of people have tried to point out that voting is futile, and I would agree that 99+% of the time it's a waste of time, and I'm never going to tell you that you have some obligation or duty or responsibility to vote because the state. No, bullshit. However, we have an opportunity here. And again, one of the things that we get sucked into playing whack-a-mole is reforming the electoral process. We need fair elections. Really? Like they're going to have a fair way to decide who the slave master is? No, not going to happen. We are going to win not with 34% to the old party's 33 and 33. We are going to win the exit polls with an overwhelming majority of 60 to 70% and a clear, overwhelming mandate to go in as a bankruptcy agent and dissolve the entire federal government. That's what it's going to take. That's the movement that we are a part of. This is what we're doing with this. So, I was supposed to say something about the book, but I already covered that, so I'll just say it's free here tonight. I wrote this, I started writing it when I was in jail to be the ultimate red pill, the easiest, quickest way to wake people up. And I succeeded because I had a lot of help. Over 300 people helped edit this book. We polished it and we made it exactly what it needs to be to serve as that. So I hope for what we are doing here first, not to win over everybody, but to get our movement from where it is now is less than 1% of the population to a critical mass of 5 to 10% of the low-hanging fruit of the people who are ready and receptive for this message. I would humbly suggest that this is an essential tool for anybody who cares about growing the movement ideologically. So, as Thomas Jefferson said, every generation needs a new revolution. Obviously, we're a little behind, right? And it's important to point out that what we are doing is not revolutionary so much as evolutionary. That this is the continuation of human progress. But as it will be written about in the history books, what we are doing is no less than carrying out the final American Revolution. What we are doing is fulfilling the promise of Americanism, of the first American Revolution. We are catching up with the founders who thought that a revolution every generation would be necessary to keep moving humanity towards freedom. We are going to end the Fed. We're going to end the fighting. We're going to end the fraud. Because America is too good for this government. We're going to neutralize it, privatize it, and localize it so that we can finally free America. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
If I end up on YouTube, I'm going to be upset.